My name is Head Coach Kate. I'm the founder of the Helios ACL project, and we have a hard-hitting talk today that I am so excited to share with you because I think it's going to help so many people. So what we are dealing with is we are going to go through what mental agility is, what emotional agility is, and how it can help you move towards your goals and conquer fear during your ACL recovery. I am based out of New York, but all the work I do is virtual, so I get to meet a lot of people and talk to a lot of ACLers. And all of them have at some point reported one feeling to me. And that feeling is fear, right? And that's what we're really here to talk about today. So when it comes to fear, it's kind of a partner with us on our ACL recovery, but it doesn't mean that it should limit you in what you can do, and it doesn't mean that you should let it stop you from living your life. So the goal at the end of this talk is that you have a good sense of how to move forward past fear and take it as a partner with you instead of it holding you back. So a little bit about how I came to start working in mental agility exercises into how I treat my athletes. So what I noticed was, there's all these outcome measures that measure, confidence returning to sport. If anyone knows what the ACL RSI is, it's just an outcome measure that basically measures, okay, I'm 60% confident with everything that has to do with my sport. So then from there, it was kind of like, all right, well, how do we help athletes become more confident? And when I use the term ACL athlete, I just want to very quickly go over who I'm talking to. Anyone that has had an ACL injury and wants to get back to activities they love to do, to me, that's an ACL athlete. So not excluding anyone here. You don't have to play competitive sports. If your goal is to hike, if your goal is to ski, you are an ACL athlete to me. So that being said, I was left with this question with how do we get people better? Right? Then I came across the work of Susan David, which dealt with emotional agility. Now, emotional agility refers to the concept that in order to be adaptable to all the things that life throws at us, we need a set of emotional skills that help us cope because, anyone that is going through an ACL recovery now or is kind of on the tail end of theirs knows there's ebbs and flows and you're going to have some bad times, you're going to have some bad days, and you're definitely going to feel fear, feel uncomfortable emotions at some point in that journey. So in order to cope with that, emotional agility is a great tool. Now, what exactly it is. So emotional agility refers to as negative or difficult emotions come up, we're able to look at them and say, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Can I use it to take action? So that's the quick and dirty summary. Now, of the audience watching, put a 1 in the chat or comment on this live if you have ever felt fear during your ACL recovery. I'll give it a second. Let them pop up. Okay, great. So we know that fear is a common feeling, right? And it's probably the most common feeling that is reported to me by my athletes. So in order to deal with that, I'm unveiling my fear. Can you guys see that? Hold on. Let me make sure you can see it. Okay, beautiful. So fear is the emotion we're speaking about today. Now, using emotional agility, our goal is to make fear smaller so it doesn't hold us hostage. So when we feel an emotion we think is negative, right? Fear being that emotion. Do you guys think that's bad? Put a 2 in the chat if you think that having fear is bad or negative. Okay, great. So I'm seeing some 2s here. So what that really means is, when we have fear, I want to challenge you guys not to view it as positive or negative. I want to challenge you to say, okay, this is an emotion. It's going to come and go, but what is it telling me about my values? How do I adjust my behavior in order to, make that fear smaller? Now, when we experience an emotion, that's that little inner person inside of you saying, hey, we need to take action on this. So I think sometimes when it comes to ACL recovery, right, we can feel it, when we start new movements. We can feel it when we're even thinking about returning to sport. We can feel it when we think about getting re-injured. There's so many moments when ACLers have to confront fear that this is definitely worth talking about. So the reason that emotional agility works is actually backed by science, which is really cool. Okay, so I'm gonna flip and then we'll come back to this page. Okay, when we feel fear, when we feel an emotion, it lives in our amygdala. Our amygdala is kind of like the feel center of the brain. So picture yourself stepping onto the field again. Picture yourself going into any situation where you're a little bit unsure. What are you going to feel? You're going to feel like your palms are sweaty. You're going to feel like your heart racing. You're going to feel, you might even feel a little bit of nausea. That's all controlled by the amygdala, right? So, step one of emotional agility is to label your emotion. Now, sometimes it's going to be fear, sometimes it's anger. Depends on the context of the situation, right? But just by labeling it, it takes it from the amygdala to the more frontal lobe sections of our brain, which actually dampens amygdala activity on an MRI. So even just you step on the field, you feel, okay, I'm afraid. Even you just saying to yourself, what I'm feeling is fear, is actually going to change the part of the brain that's lighting up. It's going to dampen that hold it has on you. So even just if you take one thing from this, right, even that one step is power. So pretty cool. Now, what happens when we suppress our fear? It grows. This is also backed by science. So has anyone heard of affirmations where you're you tell yourself you're going to be great, or you tell yourself I'm not going to be afraid, you tell yourself you're brave. So an affirmation without action actually scientifically proven to increase the potency of the emotion. But when we make action steps in order to face it, fear shrinks. And you can tell I wrote that very small. Okay, so let's dive into how exactly we use emotional agility. Okay, so there's a couple steps. Step one, I already talked about. We're going to label it. And that takes it from the amygdala and brings it to a place where now we can work with it. Now, emotional agility is the concept by Susan David. This is mental agility, which has been adapted for ACLers. So the steps are a little bit different. So step one is label it. Step two is we try to understand it. And I'm going to go exactly through what this means. But if you have questions, feel free to jot them in the chat. So step two is understand it. You have to ask yourself, okay, what is this fear trying to tell me? Now let's use a little bit of an example because sometimes that is a little vague. So let's say it is your first time doing a knee extension machine after your ACL injury. You might have some fear around that, right? When we look at, when you label it, you say, what is it going to tell me? What is it trying to tell me? It tells me I don't feel ready for this yet. And that could be for running, that could be for jumping, that could be for anything that you're facing throughout your rehab, right? So step two is, what is this telling me? What actions do I need to take? Which brings us to step three, which is we create action steps and we move forward. So that's kind of the overarching idea of what a mental agility is. Now, just like any other sport-specific skill, just like any other thing you do in your rehab, whether it be range of motion, whether it be strength, you're gonna need to practice it before you're good at it. So I don't expect any of you to be able to crush this right off the bat, right? This is something we need to practice. This is something we weave in to what we're already doing in order to make us feel better and to move forward with more confidence as we move towards things that are a little bit more scary, right? Okay, so now how do we actually use it? The meat and potatoes here. Okay. In order to show you guys how exactly to use it, I thought it would be easiest to explain it as an example that I've used with one of my athletes. So people usually come to me around 3 to 6 months after their rehab hasn't been going so good. However, this one athlete, she was a collegiate soccer player and she was a defender. Her main role on the field was a sweeper. So she came to me when she was about 6 months out, and her return to sport date or goal date was around 9 months. So we had 3 months of excellent work. What did we do? We tested her strength. We made sure she was strong enough. We made sure she was hitting every milestone she should. Her quads tested at 2.5 Newton meters per kilogram. And if you don't know what that is, please reach out to me because you need to know these numbers. We looked at her return to sport readiness with a questionnaire. She scored a little bit lower. We slowly ramped up her sport-specific training. So she was doing cutting, she was doing jumping, she was doing lunging, and everything she was doing really awesome by the end of those 12 weeks. So when it came to our conversation that we were having over Zoom, and I said, do you feel ready? And she kind of backtracked and was like, I don't know if I want to go back to soccer just yet. I said, that's interesting. What are you feeling? And at first she said, I'm just frustrated with how I've been performing, how I've been playing. I said, are you really frustrated? Because, looking at everything we tested, you're crushing it. You're doing awesome. And then what she actually ended up saying was, I think I'm just a little afraid. I said, okay, now we have a starting point. She said, what are you afraid of? And she said, well, I'm afraid of re-injury, which I think a lot of you might be feeling. And she said, and I'm afraid to let my teammates down. And I said, those are both really rational things. So what I want you to do, take out a piece of paper, write it down. This helps us separate ourselves from the feeling and gives us even more power over it. So I always talk about when it comes to fear, it's an umbrella emotion. There's always things underneath it. There's always thoughts underneath it. An example might be exactly what she said. I'm afraid to let my teammates down. Another thing she might be feeling is, isolated. You haven't been with those people in a long time. You haven't, your normal routine, your normal place in those social interactions has been different. So there's always a whole bunch of feelings underneath that fear umbrella, which is why I always put fear in the umbrella. Okay, so then now let's look at this example and the action steps we took to help her get better, and action steps that you can take as well. So looking at first the lesser of the two problems, I'm afraid to let my teammates, I'm going to pull this close to you guys so you can see it. Okay, that's looking better. Okay, so first, I'm afraid to let my teammates down underneath the fear umbrella. So when I talked to her, right, we were able to unpack this a little bit. And she mentioned how, her main role on the field was to clear the ball to the other side of the field. She would slide tackle people. She was a little banshee out there, and she would make sure that no one was getting to her goal. And she knew that her teammates counted on her for that. And she wanted to know that she earned her place on the field. So I said, okay, maybe as we return, you're only 9 months out, you're not going to feel 100% just yet, right? But what you can do is communicate to your coaches, communicate to your teammates. So those were our action steps, right? So she had a conversation with her teammates on the field and said, okay, when when this specific situation occurs, like there's the other team has a breakaway, I really need you guys to step in because that used to be my role, but right now I'm not feeling like I can do it with my usual confidence. Maybe that will change, but that's how I'm feeling today. And she had a conversation with her coach saying, hey, when we're up against certain types of teams, I don't think I'm there yet. So it ended up that these conversations went really well and ended up improving her relationships with those two groups. So right there, we have some action steps that made her shrink that fear down because now she knew her teammates and coaches understood what her abilities were at that time. Now, when it comes to fear around something physical, let's go through the second example because I think this is where more of you are sitting. Okay. Can we see here? I think we can. Okay. So fear of re-injury. Whoa, that's a big one to unpack. There's always 5 or 6 or 7 more pieces underneath that. Now, keep in mind, this is going to have to do with your goal activity. So when you are doing this exercise, I want you guys to keep that in mind, okay? So for her, we broke it down into many pieces. So I'm just going to go through one piece that we did, because if you try to tackle all of her injury at once, it's going to be a little bit overwhelming and you're going to run out of space on the paper. Okay, so her main role on the field was to clear the ball. How she got hurt was when she was clearing the ball up the field to her offense, she actually got slide tackled, and that's how she tore her ACL. So it was a contact injury. So this naturally was something she had fear around. Now, keep in mind, we already knew physically she could do it. So this is really addressing the mental piece. This exercise will not replace being physically able to do stuff. So if that's a problem you're facing, DM me because let's figure it out. Okay, but back to her. So clearing the ball was the big problem she was facing. Now, we said, okay, we can always break this down into 4 or 5 pieces below. So, she got a friend, and she had her friend on her soccer team kicking the ball under pressure, which is a similar situation to she got hurt, but one step easier, right? What's one step easier from that? Another thing, practice clearing the ball alone, right? Without pressure. And then even smaller than that, kicking the ball with 50% effort, right? So are you picking up what I'm putting down here? The goal is take something big, break it up into smaller and smaller pieces so you can create action steps. So what we ended up doing, right? This one, she's like, I don't feel any fear on this. I can do this, no problem. Okay. So we said, okay, let's practice kicking the ball full velocity alone. And what I want you to do for the next 7 days is I want you to do 20 kicks every single day. That way, at the end of the week, we can graduate to the next hardest part, which was kicking the ball under pressure. Now, she had some different people help her because the same friend didn't want to go every day. But in the same week, she kicked the ball 20 times, at least, every single day, with pressure on her. Then, so at the end of the week, I said, are you feeling more confident that you can do this? And she said, yeah, I feel a little bit less fearful. Now you can repeat that in increasing intensity. You can repeat those action steps as much as possible till you feel the fear shrink. That's a tongue twister. Are there any questions on this so far? Okay, I'm taking that as a no so far. I think if I were to give you guys some takeaways, right? The goal when you're coming back from ACL injury is not to abolish fear. Because remember, our emotions are tools. They're signposts that we need to take action. They are not positive, nor are they negative, right? That fear is our inner little self saying, hey, can you please take action on this? A mistake I see people make is they do this exercise and they don't make the action steps small enough that they could do them, or they don't do the action steps and then it pretty much has no effect on their fear. Now, just labeling your emotion does help it, but when it comes to ACL injury, our goal is obviously to make you feel more confident at activities you love to do, so it's important that we practice those elements. I always think about this as the cherry on top of a really awesome program, a really awesome return to sport, and a really awesome rehab. I'm obviously an ACL coach, so going through return to sport phases is something that I do a lot with people. If you're someone that feels like you would like to do this exercise and you want some feedback on it, I'm going to drop the link. I made a free resource that is a return to sport mental agility worksheet. And you can use it really for any part of your process. If you're even in the early stages, I think this is still really useful when you're thinking about things that are barriers for you. So that being said, if you need some help, reach out. What I'm going to do, I think the best way to deliver it to you guys is I'm going to drop the link on this post fill out the information so that way I can send it right to your email because it's pretty big. I had so much fun. I'm hopping off. If you need any help with your ACL recovery, reach out to me because I'm always here to help and answer questions. All right, have a good one. Bye, guys.